Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our May 2021 WatchGuard Update Webinar. As always, this is Madison Slater, your WatchGuard tour guide here at JSCM Group. Hope you are all having a great month so far. Somehow it's already May. I'm not sure how that's happened. In my brain, it's still end of January, beginning of February, but we are barreling towards the summer. Hope everyone's having great weather wherever you are. Thanks for joining us. Let's go ahead and jump right into our topics for this week. But just a quick reminder, first, all lines will be on mute. You can use your computer for audio. This webinar is being recorded and will be able to be played back on our website. There's a chat window available to you, so if you have any questions, please send those over, and I'll be happy to answer those at the end. All right, so our topics this month. First, we will be talking about current firmware options, trying to give you guys, keep you guys up to date on what your firmware options are. We'll be talking about new AuthPoint time schedules. So if you're using WatchGuard AuthPoint for MFA, talk about some of the new functions there. Give you a few WatchGuard Cloud updates. And then our demo this month is going to be how to migrate firewall configuration, something we get quite a few questions about, so I want to make sure you understand what that process is. And then finally, we'll share with you some of our upcoming training. So if you're looking for more official WatchGuard information, you can sit in on one of our classes. All right, firmware. We do have some updated releases available to you as of May. So again, if you've joined us in any of our previous webinars, you know that WatchGuard has different firmware versions available based on the hardware model that you are running. This all has to do with the chipsets and the functions on the firewall, what their general capabilities are. So if you are currently running any XTM devices that are still being actively licensed, there is a new firmware release for those, 12.1.3 Update 5, that was released on May 10th of this month. So if you are running any of those XTM devices, I would recommend you go ahead and upgrade to that Update 5. Now, again, just in case you are not aware, if you have an XTM device, those are quickly reaching end of life, end of support from WatchGuard, which means they will not be receiving new firmware updates. This 12.1.3 is quite an outdated version at this point. The updates that we're seeing to this are purely patches to that version. If you still have XTM devices, we highly, highly, highly recommend that you consider trading up to a T-Series or an M-Series box. Get the benefit of your dollars. Make sure that you're running on a box that is being actively supported and updated. If you are on some of the older T-Series or M-Series boxes, so these would be things like our T10s, our T30s, our M200s, M300s, the new release on those is 12.5.7 Update 3, also released on May 10th. So if you are running on any of those boxes, we would recommend that you upgrade to the most recent release of that firmware. And then for anyone on our newer T or M series or bigger boxes, so those would be things like the T20, the M270, the M470. Those have a new release, 12.7 Update 1, also again released on May 10th. 12.7 is a pretty big release. They jumped a whole number there. And just in case you are not aware, when it comes to updates, when you're seeing things like Update 5, Update 3, Update 1, those are purely patches for that firmware version. In general, we typically wait until there is a first update on a new firmware release. So for things like 12.7, especially because it was a big jump, we wanted to make sure that we have that 12.7 Update 1. So we are testing that. So far, everything looks good. I would feel comfortable recommending, regardless of the model aspect that you're in, these latest firmwares are all updated releases with bug fixes. So moving to any of those, you should be good. And again, with that 12.7, there are some new functions there. If you have not read up on the 12.7, I would recommend you check the release notes, see what's there. But you can also reach out to us if you have any questions about what that firmware looks like. All right, so one of our topics this month, AuthPoint time schedules. So AuthPoint is WatchGuard's MFA, multi-factor authentication. We are big proponents of MFA in general. It's a huge piece of security. WatchGuard's AuthPoint is, in our opinion, one of the better options out there. We use it here at JSCM on basically everything that we can. We highly recommend this. If you are not doing MFA on things like VPNs, your email access, your computer logins, you need to be doing that. It's a vital part of security on a network. AuthPoint is something that WatchGuard acquired a couple of years ago, and the developers of the original AuthPoint still work for WatchGuard and are working diligently to make sure that new updates are being released. One of those being the new time schedules. So inside of AuthPoint, when you are setting this up, one of the things that you can do is write policies, and these policies are written by the group of user, and that indicates what they have access to. So here on the right, you can see an example of a screenshot. We are writing these by groups, and then we specify the resource that they have access to. So this is an access to the IDP portal, which, if you are not familiar with that, is a web portal available through AuthPoint. One of the new functions of IDP is that you can use it to set up a user's token. It also gives you a single sign-on method for things like web resources that you have set up through AuthPoint. One of the new options in these policies is this time schedule. So this allows you to, you can create different times, different schedules based off of when you want these policies to be available, which is a really nice implementation. So examples of this, maybe you only want certain access available during working hours or on weekends or extended hours. You can define these time policies, and then you can specify by group in the policy if they can or cannot log into that during the time that you are setting. So as an example, this might be a little bit extreme, but you could say, I'm tying AuthPoint into my 365 email environment. I don't want anyone to be able to log into that web portal outside of extended hours. So you can set that so that if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, then someone who's trying to connect into your network from a country that might not have the best intentions wouldn't be able to get in because your AuthPoint is controlling that through the schedule. So a new implementation there. I think it's a really nice piece of that. This doesn't specifically show it. There are also ways in your policies where you can restrict by IP, by network location. So lots of fun things that you can do in those policies.
Yeah,
if MFA is something that you are interested in, something that you have been looking into, WatchGuard is really good about providing you options for demos with AuthPoint. Try it before you buy it. Again, we highly recommend MFA, and AuthPoint is a great option for you, and especially with new features like this. You're getting a lot of cool stuff available to you. All right, a couple of WatchGuard Cloud updates. So again, this is basically our third official management option for WatchGuard firewalls. We have WatchGuard System Manager, which is my personal favorite. You can manage your firewall through the local web interface, and now you can manage WatchGuard firewalls through the WatchGuard Cloud, which is just done, again, through your WatchGuard website. So this is something that has been out since around January. The WatchGuard Cloud has been available, and they are continuing to make new improvements to it, new features added into it. One of the new things that they have available now is Active Directory. So again, that's something that has been available to us through things like System Manager, but they are making some changes to WatchGuard Cloud to make those functions available to us. Previously, this was hidden behind a beta toggle, but after a beta period, some successful testing, they have expanded that out to the regular implementation. And of course, if we have AuthPoint integration, then we need to be able to add users and groups, so you can use those when you're setting up your firewall policies. One thing, SSO is not available yet through the cloud. There are some limitations with the cloud. It is new, so we still recommend managing your firewall through System Manager, Web UI if you really want to, but they are continuing to work on this cloud, so expect to see more features coming out of this as they continue to grow that option for you. One thing about WatchGuard Cloud, they are working on this, but right now, in order to add a device to the WatchGuard Cloud, you do have to factory reset it, and then you can pull it in. So this is not something that you can just transfer a current firewall into the cloud, and it all has to do with the way that the configuration is written. It's just a different file type. All right, moving over into our demo, migrating firewall configuration. So this is something that we get quite a few questions about, something that we do very often here, and I want to, I guess, give some secrets to how this is done. Migrating WatchGuard configurations, this is something that we see most commonly if you are replacing a firewall. You can migrate a config from one firewall to another. When you do that, there's several gotchas that you have to be careful of. So it is something that you want to be aware of from that perspective. Now, when we're migrating a configuration, there are several ways there's several pieces of this that you need to be aware of. Migrating a configuration migrates the configuration, meaning that it's migrating your policies, your network settings, your VPN settings, all of the stuff that you see in Policy Manager, it can migrate. It does not migrate things that are stored locally on the firewall. So that would be things like your status and admin credentials. If you have installed any certificates directly on that box, those things are not being migrated over. But let's say that you are in a situation where your current firewall is either reaching end of life, or maybe it's just not sized correctly. You've had some growth in your organization. You want to trade up to something, one of the newer boxes that is available, something a little bit beefier. We get the question, do I have to start from scratch? And we get that question with a little bit of hesitation, because I think the worry is that we're going to say yes. I will say my philosophy is you should never start from scratch. We have this conversation a lot, and people say, well, I just feel like my policy's in really bad shape. You can fix a broken policy. It is very difficult to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. So think about it this way. If you have branch office VPNs configured on your current firewall and you're getting to replace it, you would have to rebuild those VPNs. Now, setting IPs and things like that, super simple. But what about that pre-shared key? Most of us don't know what that is. We didn't document it when we created that VPN. We needed it for the purposes of getting the VPN up and running, but after that, we forgot it existed. Building on top of the configuration, cleaning up the configuration is always our way that we would rather go. It has been very rare that I would look at a firewall and say, yeah, you know what, this is just garbage. Start from the beginning. You can always fix it. So, all right, let's say that we are in a situation, again, where we want to trade up the current firewall that we have. I have alleviated your fears and said, no, you do not have to start from scratch. So what we are going to do in this situation is take the configuration from our current firewall and put it on our new box. When we do this, it is better to use System Manager. So if you are someone who is used to using the web UI, I would highly recommend in this case that you use WatchGuard System Manager. It's just going to make monitoring and managing those configuration files a lot easier. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to connect into your current firewall. The one that you're getting ready to replace, that's the one that we want to access because that's got the policy on it, right? So this is the one that we're going to need to pull that config off of. All right, so let me get this popping up on my other screen here. All right, so this is my current config. You can see I've already got some policies in place. I've got my network configuration set. I've got my VPNs configured. I do not want to start from scratch. So the simple thing here is I'm going to say File, Save as File, which is going to allow me to save a copy of my configuration to my computer. So I'm just going to save it here where I know where to find it. So I'm going to call this my old config. So that's all that we need to do from the old firewall's perspective. We're going to leave this firewall alone. It's going to continue managing my network until I am ready to physically swap out my new device. At that point, the configuration is going to be set, so there's not going to be a ton of downtime. So I can disconnect from this firewall now, no problem, I'm done. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to prep my new firewall. Now, in order to get this device ready to go, the big thing that you need to do is activate it on your WatchGuard.com account. If you've never activated a firewall, it's very simple. You log into your WatchGuard.com. Under My WatchGuard up at the top, you go to Activate Products, and then you would put in the new device's serial number. And it's going to walk you through the rest of the process. Very straightforward. At the end of that process, it's going to provide you with a feature key. And that feature key is vital to the production of the firewall because that's its license. So what you will want to do is take that feature key And what I usually just save it into like a text document or something on my computer so I have easy access to it. Now, once I get that firewall activated, now I can connect into it and I can get it set up. When you are setting up a brand new firewall, all that you need to do, I've got my computer ready, I've got WatchGuard System Manager installed. I'm going to put that new firewall on my desk or on my workbench, power it up. I'm going to take my computer, plug it into port 1, Ethernet 1 on that WatchGuard firewall. You do not need to worry about any of the other interfaces. You do not need to worry about plugging that device into the internet. Set it up locally. So plug your computer into port 1. Now, by default, port 1 is our trusted network. It is configured on a 10.0.1.1/24 network. It is set to hand out DHCP. So the other thing on your computer is that you want to make sure that your network adapter is not statically set with an IP address. Once you have confirmed that, you have plugged into port 1, the firewall should hand you an IP on 10.0.1, the 10.0.1 subnet. So you're probably going to get .2. At that point, in WatchGuard System Manager, you could say File, Connect to Device. Your IP is 10.0.1.1, username and status, passphrase, read only, READONLY, all lowercase, all one word. So what we've done at this point is we would be just connecting directly into that firewall. Once you are on that firewall, you will open up Policy Manager. Now, this Policy Manager is going to be pretty much empty because it's a brand new firewall. Now, I'm using one of my training devices, so I've got a couple of policies here, but for all intents and purposes, this is going to be a blank device. So once we have the config open, now we just need to pull in our old firewall's config. So we will say File, Open, Configuration File. I don't need to worry about saving this current config. I'm getting ready to overwrite it. I'm going to look for the configuration of that original device. And it's going to pull my config in. So policies, network settings, VPN settings, all of that got migrated over. Now, there are two gotchas. There are two other things that got migrated over that I might not necessarily, I definitely don't want to keep in place. One of those is the license. So every firewall has a feature key, and that feature key is the license specifically to that device. Now, that feature key is tied to the configuration. So when you save a copy of your config, it also saves a copy of your license key. So if I look in my documents of where I just saved that, I've got my student 10 license key and XML file. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull those out. Let me just create a folder real quick so that we can see those. If your computer's like mine, you have things stored in places that you never realized were there. So let's do a new folder. And let's move those into it so we can see that a little bit more clearly. Okay. So when I saved that config, it saved both my XML and my TGZ file. This TGZ file, that's the license. So what happens is when you import a config into a firewall, if you look in the feature key, it's going to show your old device's information. So this would be showing my old device that's getting ready to expire. There are two ways that you can handle this. One is once it imports that, you can click Remove, click Import, and then paste in the new feature key. Paste in that new device's feature key so that it has its correct identity. The other thing that you can do is before you import that config, delete or move that TGZ file somewhere else. So what that does is when you pull in that config, that was in here, nope. And if you're like me, you also save things in places that you can't remember where it is. There it is. Okay, so let's open that. That would pull my configuration in, but my feature key would not be present. So then, again, I just go to Import, and I would paste that feature key in to give the firewall its identity. You have to make sure that the feature key is updated. So either remove the TGZ file before you import, or once you import, go to Setup, feature key, click remove, that clears it, and then click import and paste your new feature key in. That's the big thing that you have to be careful of when you are copying over a config. The feature key is specific to a piece of hardware, meaning it is tied to a particular serial number. You don't want the old serial number trying to be attached to the new serial number. It's not going to work. The final thing is set up OS compatibility. OS compatibility is what tells the firewall what firmware version it is running on. So if you are moving from an older device to a newer device, you would need to make sure that your OS compatibility is set correctly. So let's say that my old device it was an XTM device, so it's somewhere in that 12.1 range. Then I would need to make sure that I'm updating this OS compatibility to what this current piece of hardware is running on. Once you do those two things, the only big thing that is left is updating your status and admin credentials. Those are not carried over when you copy and config. Those are stored locally on the box. So I would need to make sure that I'm updating my credentials. But moving configs, very simple, takes a couple of minutes. Again, once you copy that config over, it's really just the feature key, the OS compatibility, and then making sure that your passwords are up to date. Once you do those things, you're in pretty good shape. We do this a lot. If you are running into a situation where you are looking at trading up and you don't feel comfortable with those steps, we are happy to help. We're happy to walk you through whatever we need to walk you through to make sure that you guys can get your firewall up and running very quickly. Once you move that config over, from a downtime perspective, what you're going to do is you're going to take your new firewall, put it in your server room, put it in the rack, wherever you want it to go. Power it on. Your downtime is literally how quickly can you move cables from old firewall to new firewall. Config stays the same, so you're just moving from port 1 to port 1, port 0 to port 0. So your downtime is seconds, just seconds of getting those cables moved over. All right. As far as upcoming classes, we do have some classes coming up for you guys. If you are interested in WatchGuard training, we do have a class coming up in a couple of weeks in Denver. All of our classes are available for both in-person as well as virtual. I know there's still a lot of uncertainty with, should I be present in class? Should I, do I feel comfortable traveling? We make sure to offer both options for you, so any upcoming classes that we have will be available, both in person and virtual. Just so you are aware, on our website, if you go under training, WatchGuard Firewall training schedule, this is where you can see our upcoming training available to you. So again, our next class is June 1st through 4th. That one is actually a Tuesday through Friday class because the 31st is Memorial Day. We typically do Monday through Thursday. We are going to be switching out some of our upcoming out of Charlotte classes. So we've got a Las Vegas class coming up. So if you are interested in traveling to Vegas, we will meet you there. We are doing some Atlanta classes as well in July. And then we've got another Vegas class coming up in August. So, we're trying to get out to different areas of the country. If nothing else, maybe you can get some travel approved to get yourself out of your office. I know for me, it helps getting away a little bit. So we do have those options coming up for you. All right, now we will open it up. If you have any questions at all, please send those over in chat. I will be happy to answer those. If not, I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you tuning in this month. And as always, if you have any follow-up questions after this webinar, we will be happy to assist. So I'll give it just a minute, see if anyone has any questions. All right, doesn't look like we have anything coming in. Again, if you have anything after the webinar, anything that pops up, please feel free to shoot me an email, mslater@jscmgroup.com. You can also always reach out if you know who your account manager is. If you're not sure, shoot me an email. I'll let you know who to get in touch with. We're happy to help with everything that we can. Thank you all again for attending this month. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing you in June. Thanks.